Well, it was a long weekend in many respects, but the transfer portal has officially closed. Did Tennessee get decimated, or did the Vols survive? We'll have that conversation here on a Monday, Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, good Monday morning, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Vols, your number one spot for Tennessee football news and entertainment 5 days a week, weekday mornings where you get your podcast free and available. You guys know it, and we'll answer your questions, your mailbag questions on tomorrow's show. So send in your questions at _Caner at Locked On Vols, and of course you can comment on the YouTube channel. The transfer portal officially closed Sunday morning, so it was a late Saturday night for many of us. Just kind of sitting there waiting to see if more Tennessee Volunteers were going to jump in the transfer portal. There was one extremely late reported transfer portal edition. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But did Tennessee survive, or did Tennessee take a lashing in the transfer portal? More on that. The wide receiver room that has gone from a decent number to not a good number whatsoever. Dylan Sampson declares for the NFL draft. How big of a loss is that? But of course, we know that was expected. All that and more here on a Monday show. Do want to go ahead and remind you guys, before we get into this conversation, that the cutoff date, December 28th, it was through December 28th, which was through Saturday. That is only for players who want to be in the transfer portal. That is not to get players out of the transfer portal. So, Tennessee's kind of unique in terms of it starts classes later than pretty much anybody in the country, around the 20th, 21st of January. To put that into context, I think Ohio State and Texas, they start classes like January the 6th. So, Tennessee kind of gets an advantage in a lot of those respects in terms of they can host guys out of the transfer portal for, the first couple of weeks of January, and they can make their decisions and still commit to Tennessee, sign with Tennessee, enroll in classes, and be here for the spring semester. So Tennessee's going to sign guys out of the transfer portal. Tennessee only has one transfer portal commit, Wendell Moy, the offensive lineman from Arizona. That's the lone addition so far for the University of Tennessee, but that does not mean it's going to cap there. Tennessee's going to get several others from the transfer portal, that is for sure. But the cutoff date for players who wanted to be in the transfer portal was at midnight Sunday morning, and you're going to see some more names kind of trickle in on Monday because fact of the matter is the NCAA portal it's not officially open, quote unquote, on the weekends. And so some of those won't officially be filed in until Monday. So you'll see some names pop up in here. And sure, could there be another Tennessee surprise that we just don't know about? Absolutely, that could happen. But at current standing here, once that portal officially closed on Saturday night or Sunday morning, and as we sit here and talk on a Monday morning, it feels like Tennessee is where it is, which means down 13 scholarship players, plus a couple of walk-ons. Most notable, of course, is backup quarterback Gaston Moore. There was a late transfer portal departure on Saturday night, or at least reported planning to enter the NCAA transfer portal, and of course, that's wide receiver Mike Matthews. And that one was kind of a tough one for sure, but again, it's one of those where he had plans to enter the transfer portal. Tennessee, since that time, late Saturday night, and to the time that we're talking about right now, trying to talk him out of it. There's been fans that have been tracking Instagram posts, and is Tennessee football in his bio, and is there any Tennessee pictures on his Instagram post? Has he made those hidden? Has he brought those back? I mean, we can play those games all night long. No, there is some dialogue there. We'll see if Mike Matthews wants to withdraw his name from the transfer portal. And it feels like there's a decent shot at that. But, of course, we're not fortune tellers here, and everybody's different, okay? A lot of people can sit back there and say these kids, all they care about is the money, and that's true for a lot. Playing time, circumstance, weapons around you, all that and more. But we'll see what Mike Matthews decides to do. There is optimism, it feels like, at the time of this recording, that he could still be with Tennessee. But again, we'll have to see exactly what that looks like. And remember as well, this is important to note out, players can withdraw their names from the transfer portal even if they're officially in and go back to their program. That program, though, does have the option to, if they still want to honor that scholarship or not. Tennessee absolutely would honor that scholarship if Mike Matthews wanted to come back, if he is officially in the transfer portal here on a Monday. which again, Hayes Fawcett of On3 said that, he told On3 that he planned to enter the transfer portal. But look at Braylon Russell, the running back from Arkansas. He was going to the portal, then he came back. Then he was going to the portal, then he came back. And so, teams can absolutely welcome back a player, and they can come back and they can kind of honor that scholarship. So Saturday night, the only loss, as we were all kind of waiting on pins and needles there until the midnight hour, was Mike Matthews. And that technically didn't get public until a couple minutes after midnight. Turns out he asked for his papers around 10:30, about an hour, 2 hours before, an hour and a half, 90 minutes before the portal closed. And again, we'll kind of be watching that situation to see exactly if Matthews will stay in the portal or if Tennessee will get him back. There were a ton of Nico Iamaleava rumors over the weekend. And as a fan, that's not fun. And it's easy to say, well, this is just kind of the nature of the business. And it is. In so many ways, this is like an NFL model. One way it's not like an NFL model, NFL players are under contract. It's not free agency every single year, okay? Sure, there are some holdouts and all that, but this is not free agency every single year. So in terms of the business as usual, every single player on every team around the country thinks they need to make more money, and a large portion of those guys are asking for more money. That's why after the college football playoff loss, the focus on the holiday week for Tennessee was roster retention, getting the guys back into the fold for the 2025 season. And then, of course, they're going to set their sights on transfer portal acquisitions coming up here the first of the year. And you're going to see, a lot of teams that are going to be not spiraling, but just kind of treading water and trying to navigate those couple of days when they get out of the college football playoffs. Remember, all these teams that did not make the college football playoffs, every team in college football except for 12, okay, had since the end of the regular season to navigate those waters, roster retention, go and try to attack the transfer portal. Tennessee's focus, obviously, that same as Indiana's focus and SMU's focus and Clemson's focus and everybody else that played in the first weekend of the college football playoffs was on the college football playoffs. Sure, there were some of those conversations going on, but the focus was trying to win a national championship and advance on in the college football playoffs. So you have those waters you have to navigate through, and teams who are going to be playing on New Year's Day in the college football playoffs, those losers, once their season's officially over, will have 5 days where players can enter the transfer portal, and so it's going to be kind of hectic in those regards. But nonetheless, there were some rumors about quarterback Nico Iamaleava, and they all started with two kind of cryptic Instagram stories, right, from Nico. And does Nico run his accounts? I don't know. Whoever runs those accounts, whether it's Nico, whether it's his representatives, whether, whatever, in my opinion, and that's, take it for what it's worth, this is just one man's opinion, not a good look. Not a good look with the cryptic, pictures of him holding the football and the little, emoji with the, the hand over the face and, the song in there about getting money. I mean, it's just not necessarily a good look because it's creating panic amongst a fan base, right? And to my knowledge, and this has been reported, Nico Iamaleava, they never requested papers for the transfer portal. So it was a lot about nothing, okay? It was a lot of worry all day Saturday about nothing. But still, why put out those cryptic Instagram messages? You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's not the best look in my opinion. Again, that's just one man's opinion. But the important thing is Nico never requested papers. Okay, Nico was not transferring. Nico's not transferring. He's your quarterback in 2025. And that's very, very good. So when you look at who Tennessee lost, a total of 13 scholarship players. And we'll look at the wide receiver room a little bit in depth in segment number 2. But Mike Matthews, again, we'll see exactly if he's planning to stay in the portal or not. But Mike Matthews, Squirrel White, tight end Holden Staes, defensive lineman Jason Jenkins, defensive back Christian Harrison, running back Cam Selden, wide receiver Nathan Leacock, wide receiver Chaz Nimrod, offensive lineman Bison Lang, wide receiver Caleb Webb, defensive back Jordan Matthews, linebacker Jalen Smith, and running back Khalifa Keith. So sure, those are some nice players. Sure, those are some depth pieces. But guys, outside of obviously Mike Matthews, who's going to play a major role for Tennessee in 2025, outside of Squirrel White, who's been one of your leading receivers each of the past 2 seasons, outside of Holden Staes, who's a vital piece in 12 personnel in the multiple tight end sets because he was the second option to Miles Kitselman, and everybody believes that Miles Kitselman will exercise that extra year of eligibility for junior college athletes and come back. Tennessee didn't necessarily lose a whole lot of production, right? And so, in my opinion, when you're trying to navigate these waters, and again, we will see about Mike Matthews when it's all said and done, if he wants to, get out of the portal, if his name officially does go in the portal. But again, the report was 2-on-3s Hayes Fawcett, like, hey, he plans on entering the portal. Tennessee didn't lose just a huge amounts of production or star power. Squirrel White is your most productive player that you lost, and we'll get into that here in a moment. And I'm not saying that's nothing, okay? I'm not trying to minimize that, but overall, say you get Mike Matthews out of the portal, not a bad job. It feels like it's much worse because of the online rumors and, the total number of walk-ons that kind of added that number and everything, but overall, Tennessee's not dealing with anything else other programs around the country aren't dealing with as well. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. What Tennessee does need to focus on is rebuilding that wide receiver room, because you went from 8 scholarship players in that room this year in 2024. You're down 9. You're down 7. Okay, you're down 7, and that is not kind of where you want to be. More on that as we continue on here with this Monday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Stay tuned. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That's definitely happened to me before. I had a few subscriptions I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them down. It's like having your own personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, spending habits, or even goals that you want to hit on this year. Rocket Money has over over 5 million users, and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year while using the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. Hey guys, welcome back into your Monday morning edition of Locked On Vols. Don't forget mailbag questions. I'll take those on tomorrow's show at _Kaner on Locked On Vols, and of course you can comment on the YouTube show as well. So let's take a closer look at the wide receiver room from 2024. Tennessee is now down 7 scholarship players from that room at current standing, right? The only 2 scholarship players, unless I'm just completely missing somebody, that Tennessee currently has returning is Braylon Staley and Chris Brazzell. And there was some chatter, late chatter about Chris Brazzell as well on Saturday, but that kind of seemed to fizzle out there towards the end. But right now, those are the only 2 players on your roster that played wide receiver for you this past season. Of course, you're losing Brew McCoy, graduation. You're losing Dante Thornton, graduation. Okay, those are 2. You've lost 5 scholarship wide receivers to the transfer portal, and that being, as it currently stands, with Mike Matthews. We'll see how that plays out. Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, and Nathan Leacock. All right. Fellow wide receiver, but walk-on Nate Spillman also entered the transfer portal, so he's kind of included in that group. You are bringing in Travis Smith, 4-star recruits. You are bringing in Radarius Jackson, 4-star recruits. And you are bringing in Joakim Dotson, a 4-star recruit by On3, 3-star overall in the composite rankings. So that's your freshman class that's already signed, ready to roll and come in here and help. But still, that doesn't leave you an awful lot. Tennessee has got to focus on the wide receiver room and has got to rebuild that. Whenever the transfer portal officially opened and Tennessee was still preparing for Ohio State in the college football playoffs, yeah, the talk was in the transfer portal Tennessee was going to be focused on interior offensive linemen and interior defensive linemen. And that's still to be the case, don't get me wrong. Tennessee's also already, gained the commitment of Arizona offensive lineman Wendell Moy that we've already, mentioned and talked about. Tennessee was in the running for Josh Thompson, the guard from Northwestern, but, it was right there ready to roll on Christmas Eve, and then a phone started ringing and, a bidding war ensued, right? And, he's going to LSU, and that's sometimes how it works out. And, in terms of that one, I know a lot of you guys might be thinking like, oh my gosh, Tennessee just can't even win those. Like, is that a piece that you'd want? Sure. Are you willing to overspend for an offensive guard? No, you shouldn't. That's not good business, in my opinion. Okay? Are you willing to you're going to have to overspend in some areas, right? Quarterback, look at the NFL. This is like the NFL model, right? everybody's overpaying for quarterbacks in the National Football League. It's just like that in college. Everybody is overpaying for quarterbacks in the college realm. Getting after the quarterback, edge defenders, defensive ends, those positions covet money for the most part. A lot of times wide receivers, weapons on the offensive end will covet, money in the college game. In the college game, sometimes running backs do, not often, but of course, running backs don't make great money in the National Football League. But are you willing to overspend to get an offensive guard when you already brought in a guard? In my opinion, no. So would that have been a nice piece to have? Absolutely. Are you willing to break the bank to get him? No, I think that would have been a poor investment. But nonetheless, that was kind of a sidebar there. So Tennessee will need to bring in my opinion, at least 2 wide receivers from the transfer portal. One would you like to be a slot receiver. One you would like to be, or maybe 2 outside receivers. Braylon Staley, of course, can play the slot, and there's some versatility there with some of these guys as well, with Travis Smith or Darius Jackson, Joakim Dotson. But in my opinion, you need to get one of each, a slot and an outside, or maybe 2 outsides. And sure, you can spend some money to go get a guy. Tennessee's done that each of the last 2 years. Dante Thornton was a huge transfer portal addition for Tennessee 2 cycles ago. Chris Brazzell was a huge transfer portal addition for Tennessee last transfer portal cycle. So, yeah, Tennessee can obviously go out there and look at maybe a guy like Zachariah Branch from USC that played with Nico Iamaleava in the Polynesian Bowl and has been, productive. He just finished up his sophomore year, and it's a guy that I think there's been some dialogue with Tennessee a little bit, but nothing major. I don't think any visits are set up for the first of the year or anything like that. But, Zachariah Branch is a name that a lot of Tennessee fans are throwing around like, hey, we would like to have that guy on our team. 5'10", 175 pounds, coming off a season at USC where he had 47 catches, 503 yards, and a touchdown. In 2023, as a true freshman, 31 receptions, 320 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had 9 carries in 2023. He had 2 carries out of the backfield, or probably jet sweeps, in 2024. A guy that's got some versatility to his game that attended Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's just a pipeline to Power 4 programs for sure. It's where Cedric Tillman came from. But, Tennessee can go out and try to get a guy like Zachariah Branch, who, according to On3, is the number, he's the number 4 ranked wide receiver in the portal. And somebody to pay attention to, obviously. So, what if Tennessee goes out and overpays for a guy like that and then goes and gets another guy that, sure, you got to pay a little bit of money to, but you're not overspending just to kind of replenish that room. I think that's necessary. But, a lot of the wide receivers, some of the higher-ranked wide receivers that were in the transfer portal, they have found other, landing spots. Kevin Concepcion, that was a name. KC Concepcion was the name that we talked about entering the NC State game in week 2 of the season. He's going to play football at Texas A&M. You've got Dane Key of Kentucky. He's going to Nebraska. You got Barryon Brown of Kentucky. He's going to LSU. Nick Anderson from Oklahoma, who dealt with a ton of injuries, going to LSU. A couple other noteworthy names. Mario Craver, once upon a time Tennessee football commit, going from Mississippi State to Texas A&M. Again, we can go down the list and all that, but Isaiah Horton, one-time Tennessee target from Miami, going to Alabama. There's a lot of guys who have already found their destinations, but remember, guys, there's still plenty of guys at wide receiver in all positions in the transfer portal, and there's going to be more. With more of these playoff teams losing, guys will enter the transfer portal just like you saw with Tennessee. I mean, since Tennessee lost, you've had Mike Matthews, Squirrel White, Holden Staes, Jason Jenkins. Got a lot of guys into the transfer portal. So that's going to be the same for a lot of these guys who are, still playing and still in the college football playoffs. But no ifs, ands, buts about it. Tennessee's got to replenish that wide receiver room. So I think they need to take at least 2 guys out of the portal, at least 2 guys. Pair that with the 3 newcomers and the freshmen, and, of course, the 2 incumbents coming back in Chris Brazzell and Braylon Staley. Last year, Tennessee had pretty much a complete overhaul of its defensive secondary, and it was for the good. Jermon McCoy had a lot to do with that, and he was a great get out of the transfer portal. Ricky Gibson's maturity and his growth and his development had a lot to do with that. Boo Carter had a lot to do with that, right? I'm not saying that Tennessee doesn't have guys like that on the roster, but, So far, Tennessee's not brought in a wide receiver from the transfer portal that it would even come in the same area code of what Jermon McCoy has meant for the Tennessee defense this year. I guess my point is, though, complete rehash. You're starting over at defensive back in the secondary from 23 to 2024. And it was a good thing. And I think Tennessee's wide receiver room does need that complete reset because the wide receiver room, and again, it takes more than one to tango. I recognize that. Quarterback play with Joe Milton and Nico Iamaleava very much in that conversation as well. But, man, wide receiver play has just not been good enough. It's not been good enough in a couple of years. So that is a huge focus for Tennessee in the transfer portal. The Vols are down 7 scholarship wide receivers from the 2024 roster, 2 of which to do graduation, okay? McCoy and Thornton, 5 of which to the transfer portal. At current standing, Mike Matthews, and then Squirrel White, Chaz Nimrod, Caleb Webb, Nathan Leacock, and then you have walk-on Nate Spillman as well, who is into the transfer portal. What will the wide receiver room look like at the end of this week? Hopefully a whole lot better. We'll be with you every single step of the way right here on Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, we'll shift away from the transfer portal a little bit. We'll talk about one of the best running backs in Tennessee history declaring for the National Football League draft. That's coming up next as we continue with a Monday Locked On Vols. Hey, I want to tell you guys about my friends over at Home Field Apparel. Football season, sadly, it is over, but it'll be here before you know it next fall. And you're going to be heading out to Neyland Stadium, and you're going to be wanting to be decked out in style, and you can do that thanks to Home Field Apparel. But, basketball season as well. You can be decked out at Thompson-Boling Arena at the Food City Center, rooting on the Tennessee Vols and the Lady Vols as well, thanks to Home Field Apparel's exclusive vintage designs. Can't miss Kickoff 2024 campaign, bomber jackets, coaching jackets, and so much more. Never before seen items only for the University of Tennessee. They're not sold anywhere else. Curated so fans can have the new gear to wear all season long. Plus, you got the Platinum VIP boxes where you can have new VIP koozies, new hats, new ringer. Also guarantees 20% off early access to Tennessee football's releases throughout the season. No more missing out on Home Field because it is sold out. Home Field is a collegiate apparel brand that focuses on vintage designs. And the vintage designs for the Tennessee Volunteers are fantastic. I promise you there. Go to homefieldapparel.com to get started today. That is homefieldapparel.com. Homefieldapparel.com to go ahead and get started today. All right, we got a final segment left here on this Monday morning edition of Locked On Vols. It's kind of been one of those shows where it's kind of like annoying because it's just, everybody's freaking out. And then you kind of sit there and look at it. It's like, okay, well, yeah, Mike Matthews right now at the time of this recording, that would be a huge loss to the transfer portal. Squirrel White's been productive. Okay. Tennessee needs to focus and is focusing on trying to get Mike Matthews back. So I think that story is very much TBD. But, Squirrel White's like, okay, he's been productive, but like, that one's okay in my opinion. Like you can survive. Holden Staes you like to hold on to, but if you have Miles Kutzman coming back, pairing him with Ethan Davis, and then one of those freshman tight ends, maybe even a guy that like Cole Harrison, who's already been here, can act as that third tight end, you can still run a lot of 12 personnel if you want to. Okay. Jason Jenkins you like an awful lot, but it's a rotational position for sure. Christian Harrison, I thought, continued to get better this year, but obviously that's Boo Carter's spot. Cam Selden was a non-factor for you. Nathan Leacock was a non-factor for you. Vyson Lang was a non-factor for you. Chaz Nimrod had opportunities, but he didn't make the most of them. Caleb Webb had opportunities. He didn't make the most of them. Jordan Matthews was a non-factor for you this year. Jalen Smith was for you, but you're bringing in a really good linebacker class that can take those snaps, okay? And then Khalifa Keith was a non-factor for you. So, again, overall, as the portal closed Sunday morning, I think Tennessee survived this thing all right. Your quarterback is fine. He's not going anywhere. There was some late chatter about Chris Brazzell. He didn't go anywhere. And then if you can get Mike Matthews' name out of there or negate him from officially entering on a Monday, boy, I think you did pretty good. But then, of course, you got to focus on going and attaining talent from the transfer portal. You got to go out and you got to get some help for sure. Tennessee's got one. Wendell Moy, need more. Need plenty more. And then, of course, you start looking ahead and trying to build this roster and build this this journey. This starts in January, this journey for the 2025 college football playoffs. A guy that was a huge factor in Tennessee's run to the college football playoffs in 2024 was running back Dylan Sampson. Obviously, we thought that he would go to the NFL draft and declare. He made that official this weekend. Can't blame him there. Again, you look at Mel Kiper's, top 10 at each position and some of the the mock drafts and everything, and maybe it's not as high as you would expect from a guy that's going to declare and forego his senior season to declare for the NFL draft. But you got to remember, guys, Dylan Sampson's stock will not improve at all if he comes back next year. He has a lot of miles, a lot of tread on them tires, as the old adage for the Alabama running backs would say, right? A whole lot. And so at the running back position, you need to go now. And say Dylan Sampson doesn't even make an NFL roster next year, but say he makes a practice squad. He's making a pretty good living, and then of course to be called up and hopefully, futures contracts or whatever the case may be. But chances are he's going to make an NFL roster because I think he's that good. He had a fantastic junior season. He shattered school single season records in rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns, and total touchdowns, and points scored, consecutive games with a rushing touchdown. 929 yards after contact. Wow. 929 yards after contact. So 929 yards of his 1,491 yards came after contact. 40%, 22 of 50 of Tennessee's offensive touchdowns. Dylan Sampson was responsible for roughly almost 50% of Tennessee's touchdowns. That's incredible. He became the second Tennessee player in 3 seasons to be named SEC Offensive Player of the Year. Neither one of those guys were Heisman finalists, though. Want to point that out right there with Hendon Hooker and Dylan Sampson. Okay. Second team All-American by nearly pretty much every outlet or organization that votes on such things. Let's see here. Sampson was the 6th running back in SEC history to win the award of the SEC Offensive Player of the Year. Of course, Hendon Hooker won that honor in 2022. Sampson led the SEC in 9 different categories: rushing attempts, rushing yards, rushing touchdowns, 100-yard rushing games, rushing yards per game, points scored, points per game, all-purpose yards per game. In conference-only games, he nearly led in every rushing category, including yards at 1,051 yards, and touchdowns by a running back at 12, and in conference games only. The junior finished the season tied for 5th in the SEC in single-season history rushing touchdowns with LSU's Leonard Fournette. Oh, yeah, he was a pretty good one, right? 22 rushing scores were the most by an SEC player since Alabama's Najee Harris, tallied an FBS best 26 touchdowns in 2020. Any way you want to spin it, Dylan Sampson was fantastic. He finishes his Tennessee career ranked here in the single-season record books. Rushing attempts, 5th with 258. Rushing yards, 1st. We know that, 1,491 yards. Rushing touchdowns, 1st. We know that with 22. Rushing yards per game, 3rd with 114.7. 100-yard rushing game, 2nd with 10. Total touchdowns scored, 1st with 22. Points scored, 132. All-purpose yards, that was 7th at 1,638. And consecutive games with a rushing touchdown, that was 1st with 11. Sampson finishes his UT career record books, 9th in all-time rushing yards, 2,492. Tied for 2nd in rushing touchdowns with 35. Okay, so he scored 13 touchdowns his first 2 years combined, and then, of course, 22 this past season. He finishes tied for 3rd in 100-yard rushing games with 13, and 1st in consecutive games with rushing touchdowns. Just what a phenomenal year, and couldn't happen to a better player. I covered his recruitment, really enjoyed him. I enjoyed watching him, his growth, his development over his first couple of years, and this is the right decision for him, for sure. This is the right decision for him, and it comes as no shock. Now, what does that mean for Tennessee? Well, in typical 2025 college football-esque, you've got players announcing, making graphics, making tweets when they are going to come back and play next year. Well, and I'm not making fun of anybody doing that. It is what it is, right? If everybody in my industry was doing it, I'd probably do the same thing. In fact, I did. When I left the radio station, I typed up a little note on my notes app and I screenshotted it and I posted it. That's what I did, right? But Deshaun Bishop did that in the middle of the night on Sunday morning. And so, of course, I don't think there was any worry that he wasn't going to be back in the fold for Tennessee. But Deshaun Bishop's going to be back, and he was, Tennessee's 3rd leading rusher. Behind Nico Iamaleava and, of course, Dylan Sampson. Was he the 3rd or was he the 4th? Yeah, he was the 3rd. No, he was actually the 2nd. Yeah, he was the 2nd. I forgot Nico. You have to put sacks into there. Nico actually was 2nd in terms of yards gained. But Deshaun is ahead of him because, of course, Deshaun doesn't play quarterback and doesn't get sacked. But Deshaun Bishop's coming back. Peyton Lewis is coming back. And those two guys are going to lead that running back room next year. And, boy, I liked a lot of what I saw from Peyton Lewis as the year went along. I liked a lot of what I saw from Deshaun Bishop this year. Deshaun Bishop bet on himself twice. He bet on himself to come to Tennessee as a walk-on from Carnes High School, where he could have went and been on scholarship and, probably would have been in the fold sooner at a group of 5 school. But he came to Tennessee, did pretty well in fall camp and in spring camp, but suffered an injury and missed all of his freshman season. Comes back, took advantage of injuries from Cam Seldon and Peyton Lewis in spring and in fall camp, took advantage of all those reps, opened the season as the number 2 running back behind Dylan Sampson, and proved that he can 100% play in this league. And not only did he bet on himself by coming to Tennessee, he bet on himself this time last year by staying at Tennessee, looking and saying, okay, well, with Jabari Small, with Jalen Wright, with Dylan Sampson, they played 3 running backs last year. I can certainly, be in that rotation, this upcoming next year. And he certainly was. So I'm really, really happy to see Deshaun Bishop and how he's kind of transformed. But he's going to be back. Peyton Lewis is going to be back. You're bringing in DeJuan Morris, okay, and Justin Baker. And so that'll be 4 running backs because, of course, Khalifa Keith and Cam Seldon left for the transfer portal. And you've got Dylan Sampson going to the NFL draft. Tennessee, from a numbers perspective, Tennessee very easily could go and get another back, just a body from the transfer portal, but you're not going to be spending a whole lot of money there, okay? You shouldn't spend a whole lot of money there to begin with, but certainly to come in and be a third option at best, you shouldn't spend a whole lot of money. But that's kind of what that running back looks like. That running back room looks like right now. All right, transfer portal is officially closed. Does Mike Matthews remain in the portal or officially go in on Monday, or will he elect to come back and be a part of what's happening here at Tennessee? We will find out. Any other surprises? I don't think so, but now it's about gaining talent from the transfer portal and how Tennessee can go about doing that. And, of course, we'll cover it every single step of the way right here on Locked On Vols. Guys, thank you so much. Hope you guys had a Merry, Merry Christmas, a great week last year. Hope you have a Happy New Year coming up. New Year's Eve is tomorrow. We'll be on the air. We'll have an episode. I'll have an episode on New Year's Day as well. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And send in those questions at _Caner and at Locked On Vols for the mailbag edition of the show that is coming up tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.